Most people understand that money is an emotional subject, yet few grasp that this is why they often make poor judgments. Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money, explains how to avoid these emotional pitfalls. In this video, I'll share the 6 most crucial lessons I learned. By the end, perhaps you'll be one step ahead of your emotions. Welcome to Cashflow Canvas, where we teach lessons about investment and money-saving techniques. If you want to make your financial future better, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for the latest updates. First lesson, wealth is what you don't see. Morgan tells us of a man who drove up to the hotel where he worked in a beautiful car, a Porsche. It took everyone by surprise. However, the same man returned a week later in an old automobile. The man had a significant dent to pay for the Porsche. When he fell into financial difficulties, he was forced to sell it. The man plainly desired to appear wealthy rather than to be wealthy. Let's examine the distinction. We usually estimate people's wealth based on what we perceive. When we see someone driving a nice car, like the man in the story, we presume they're wealthy. But all we know is that the individual has less than $100,000 to spend. If that same person kept the money and drove a conventional car instead, they would have an extra $100,000. Having money that we can put to use is what makes us wealthy. There's nothing wrong with owning a costly automobile or other luxuries if you can afford them. However, if you're truly aiming to acquire goods, perhaps you want to appear affluent rather than actually being rich. Spending money to display wealth is the fastest way to have less money. Second lesson, money can buy freedom. We've all heard the saying, money doesn't buy happiness. And while we may disagree, I believe we can all agree on something far more valuable, the freedom to control how we spend our time. More than our pay or the status of our position. One of the things that brings us the most joy is the ability to do what we want, when we want, with the people we want. And that is a luxury that we may all enjoy if we are fortunate enough. However, money cannot purchase everything. It can provide us with options. People who live paycheck to paycheck cannot afford to miss a few days of work due to illness, since it may result in insufficient funds to pay the bills. Those with limited funds have little time to hunt for a new career if they are fired and may end up in a job they dislike. Those with 6 months of savings are not afraid of their boss, since they know they will not be devastated if they take some time to find another job. And those with even more savings can afford to work for a lower-paying job with flexible hours until a certain threshold is reached. Saving money provides us with more and better options, hence greater control over our lives. Third lesson, being reasonable is more essential than being rational. This, in my opinion, is the most significant of all the teachings in the book. When making financial decisions, we frequently seek the option that we assume would produce the best outcomes, when actually we should seek the option that will allow us to sleep better at night. Allow me to explain. My friend Jack wants to start investing, and he has $5,000 to do so. It is a large quantity of money for him, but he is convinced that it will go well, and even if he loses, he will not need the money. He believes now is the best time because the market has been expanding in recent months. He now has 2 choices. Option 1, he puts everything in and waits for the market to grow. Option number 2, he puts $500 down each month for 10 months. Option number 1 appears more enticing. He feels the market will rise rapidly, thus passing up the opportunity makes little sense. And that's exactly what he does. The market fell a week later. Jack has been in a state of terror for several days and is unable to look at the app. He decides to leave and loses half of his money. Jack decides to try again a few years later. He chooses option number 2 this time. He spends $500 in the first month. The market crashed a month later. He has already lost a third of his investment, but he is unconcerned. He still has money, so he purchases $500 more. When the market rises, he profits, but when the market falls, he buys more at a lower price. It is, in his opinion, a win-win situation. He is aware that he is not making the highest profits possible, but he is now sleeping like a baby, which is far more essential. Fourth lesson, nothing is free. Every investment we make has a hidden cost, and it's not a monetary cost, as you might assume. It is an emotional state, similar to fear, doubt, or stress. The difficulty is that we are usually unaware of it until it is time to pay. So instead of viewing it as a charge that we must pay in order to receive the benefit, we perceive it as a fine, and we despise it. The solution is to learn what the cost is for each investment and to be willing to pay it when it arrives. Let me give you an example. I have a guy named Matt who purchased a Bitcoin for $7,500 a few years ago. Matt believed in the project and chose to put a large sum of money into it. He was initially pleased with his decision because Bitcoin had doubled to $15,000. However, a few months later, it sank for an entire year, hitting a low of roughly $2,500. Matt struggled every time he opened the app to check the price of Bitcoin. He sobbed within every time it fell by 10%. His legs trembled. Matt questioned his decisions and whether he should sell what he had left multiple times. But he held on, and 3 years later, Bitcoin slowly recovered and reached a new high of $55,000, restoring Matt's confidence. It now appears to be simple. He only needed to buy it and wait. But Matt's achievement came at a high emotional cost that he hadn't anticipated. Always keep in mind that there is a cost to investing. Consider it a fee rather than a fine. Fifth lesson, play your game. Let's get to know two investors. The first is a father with a good career who is seeking for a means to invest his savings and build wealth in the coming years. We'll refer to him as the long-term investor. On the right, we have a man in his mid-20s who has recently started working and has plenty of free time to research markets. He enjoys doing some everyday trading to make a little additional money. We'll refer to him as the short-term investor. The short-term investor prefers expanding stocks. He frequently makes a quick profit by buying and then selling at a higher price a few hours later. The long-term investor prefers companies that he believes will perform well in the future, and it is not uncommon for those companies to be the same as those in which the short-term investor has just invested. Because both investors joined in on the trend, it will continue to draw more and more individuals until it eventually fails. The short-term investor enters and exits before the crash, therefore he is safe. However, the long-term investor does not intend to sell soon, so he bears the loss. This happens all the time in real life. Trending stocks attract an increasing number of day traders, causing the price to skyrocket. Mid and long-term investors are drawn to such success and fail to notice that other investors are playing a different game than them. When the crash occurs, they express regret, but they did not necessarily make a mistake. They will undoubtedly profit in the long run, but in the short run, they will suffer an emotional cost, the fee we discussed in the previous lesson. So, be cautious about who you seek guidance from because they may not be playing the same game as you. Sixth lesson, leave room for error. Rick, a buddy of mine, was never careful with his money. He never saved money and constantly blew his wages on trips and drinks. When Bitcoin began to climb in value, he invested $1,000 in it. After a few years, Bitcoin struggled, but it is currently 5 times larger than it was previously. I ran into him one day and inquired about his investment. He should have made a lot of money by now, but he stated he had to sell it for half the amount because he needed to buy a motorcycle. Rick might now have 5 times as much, but because he didn't have any savings, he had to sell his investments when it was inconvenient. Because the world is unpredictable, you should always plan with wiggle space. If you believe a 6-month emergency fund is adequate, increase it to 9 months just in case. If you were saving for a house in 2 years, add $20 to your monthly savings. The price you expected to spend may be higher. So, if you have the quantity you require earlier, that's fantastic. If not, you'll be glad you saved a bit extra to avoid disappointment. Always leave room for error. As we conclude, I'd like to thank you for watching. I hope you found value in this video and learned something new, and I look forward to seeing you in our future videos. I would deeply value it if you could like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support will help us to create more valuable content, and we can work together to secure your financial future. What are the key takeaways from this video that you can share in the comment section?